how do I find people on the census record, and how do I connect them to my tree? So if you've been following the last 5 or 6 videos, I've been really focusing on a certain neighborhood in St. Louis called The Hill, which is well known for being a neighborhood for Italian and Sicilian immigrants. And so Yogi Berra is probably one of the most famous people from The Hill, but there are a lot there. So what I want to do is a deep dive. How do I go about finding out where they're from, and how do I connect them to my tree? So since I've started this series, because it all started here in St. Louis, I put over 1,000 people on the tree. So with a lot, like Cesar Manzella, for example, the mobster, or Gaetano Badalamenti, who had him killed, they weren't on my tree. So I had to do a tremendous amount of research to connect them. So I had to go way back to be able to connect some of these people. Somebody's going back 200 years to be able to connect them and put them on my tree. So I'm going to go through the mechanics, how I went about doing that. So this is the 1940 census for this neighborhood, The Hill here in St. Louis. And you see Frank Badalamenti is here. This was his son Vincent. He was the one I did the last video on. So I'm going to show some very clear bias here, and I'm going to pick Sam Randazzo. Here it's misspelled as Randazzo, so razzle dazzle there. So how did I find out where he was from? It turned, spoiler, he is also from Genesee. That kind of helped because I already knew that the Badalamentes were from there. It did turn out, though, that the Favazza is from Terracini. They're very closely related there. They're right next to each other, and with Cardini. So how do we go about finding out where Sam is from and connecting him to my tree? Because he does connect on my tree. I mentioned this in the other video. What's really cool is that I actually found some pictures. So I had some pictures of Salvador, or Sam Sam is a nickname for Salvador. I think it's because it's supposedly less ethnic, because Sicilians not treated that well in the United States, as most immigrants were not treated well when they first came over. Largest mass lynching in the United States history happened in New Orleans against Sicilians. Sicilians, I think it was 11 Sicilians were the victims of that mass lynching. What I do is I use ancestry.com. You don't have to. You can go for free, and you can use familysearch.org. That'll also get you a lot of the census records and a lot of the military records. Because the two of the things we really need to find, we need to find military record or some kind of immigration record. So when they came over, or if we have a naturalization record. Things were pretty slim initially for Salvador. But what I was able to find on a 1910 census, I was able to find that he has a brother named Lorenzo. So I got 2 young men, and they did spell Randazzo correctly. But look at these other names here. Bomarito, 90% chance they're from Terracini or Genesee. More Bomarito. Palazzolo, come on. He's so even back in 1910, like I mentioned before, whether they're Sicilian immigrants or not, immigrants, because of the language and having a support system, tended to, when they came over to the United States or Canada, they tend to go to the same neighborhood because they have a support system and they actually have people that they can understand. And when you have an accent like mine...
Where are you from?
I was born in Long Island. Why?
Oh, Long Island. Oh, shit, this is rich. Long Island.
That is a big help there. So I have these 2 brothers here. Because I was able to find his brother, I got his naturalization record, which you can see here, and bada boom, right there, Genesee. And you can see Biddle Street, that was part of The Hill. So Lorenzo, and he was born, and it gives me a birth date. So knowing that the brothers are from Genesee, I can start searching Genesee, because I was able to get a death record for him. This is Sam Randazzo. We know because we know it's him because it's the same street address. So you can see here, 1222 North 7th Street, 1222 and North 7th Street there. So I knew I had the right guy. This gave me a birth date of March 25th, 1890, and it gives me the parents' names. So from here, again, this is on ancestry.com, but more than likely you can also get this on Family Search, because what I'm going to do from here is I go to Family Search. So when we're in Family Search, it's familysearch.org, we want to go down to the catalog. So we just type in Genesee. We hit search. We got census records, church records, and civil registration. Antonati is actually much better and it's available. So Antonati, and so here is a marriage record for Carini. They have most cities in Sicily on Antonati, also Italy, and you can find the civil records there. However, the church records are extensive. These are really good. So if you go into the Genesee church records, look at this. This is insane. Now we have the church records, and these go back way. These go back several hundred years. What's unfortunate with them is they're not searchable yet on Family Search, but they do have an index at the beginning of each collection. So most of the church records in Europe are going to be in Latin. So you don't actually have to speak the vernacular. You don't have to speak the local language. Now, some like Terracini, they mix it up. So there is like, it'll be like, 3/4 Latin and 1/4 Sicilian. So that can kind of throw you for a curve. But here, what I was able to do based on the death record, I was able to narrow down what the death date was. And so there is Salvador's baptism record, and it has his parents Vito and Mariana Turco. So I've got it. And I also have the baptism record for his brother and sister. So I've got the parents correct. So that gave me the parents. So with this particular record, I'll show you. I go on the direct Randazzo line. I go back. You can see Lorenzo, Marco Randazzo. Hey, that's me. I have this going back pretty far. And if you watch the other videos, you'll see that this Gaspar Randazzo, he seems to connect all these people in Genesee to Carini and, of course, to me. Kind of distant for some, but that's where I was. But so it took quite a bit of work to get back there. So how you do that is really easy. I do want to point out what helps also is the Sicilian or the European naming tradition, that you're named for your nonni or your grandparents. So Lorenzo is the firstborn male, so he is Vito's father, the paternal nonno. And then we have Salvador, who's the subject right now. He is named for his maternal nonno, Salvador Turco. So, how in the world do I get back from Vito Randazzo and Maria Anna Turco? How do I get back all the way to Carini, from Genesee to Carini, with our familiar Gaspar Randazzo? What I use is the marriage records, which are extensive. Okay, so if we go here, this is going to be the collection. This gives us all the church collections for Genesee, and the marriage records go back to 1672. 1672. So for those born around 1650, or maybe a little bit before that, we're able to get the marriage records. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to estimate based on an average age of about 25 of people getting married at this time. And I'm going to use that to try to find the marriage record, because the marriage record is going to, I'm not going to be able to find out Vito's parents from a baptism record, because Vito Randazzo is just too common of a name. There's just going to be too many. It could take hours and hours. So I need to know for certain that I've got the right one. So that's why I use the marriage record. So Vito. So what I want to do is I want to go into the collection. Usually the marriage records, their kids are born around 1880, 84. I'm going to go back about 20 something years. So I'm going to click on the 1850 to 1868. And as I mentioned before at the beginning, we have this index. So what I'm looking for Vito Randazzo. So they're doing it for some reason. They're doing it by the first name. I don't know why. But I'm glad they did it. So I'm going to jump ahead here. And so I'm going to go, now you can see I have Vito and I have Vincenzo. I mean, it's not the best script here, but it's still fairly manageable. Everything is, you can pretty much make out like Vito Galati. So from here, I can find the correct marriage record for Vito Randazzo and Maria. So that I'm able to do. So here it is. I have 11 June 1876, Vito Randazzo. And let me just go. I have it highlighted here. A little easier to read there. I have it highlighted. This gives me the parents' name. So we can see here, Vito's father is Lorenzo, so they're following the naming pattern. It gives me Maria and his parents also, Salvador and Rosalia Pizzo. So using that, just going back and getting the parents' marriage record, I can just keep going back and back and back, because as I mentioned, the marriage records are going back into the 1600s. So as long as they're married in Genesee, I can find it. If they're not married in Genesee, then I do have other resources that I can look at. Carini, I can go into the Carini collection, and the marriage records go back to 1677 here. So I can look at other cities in the area to see if they possibly got married there, which happens. So by going back into these marriage records, I was able to eventually get back, of course, as I mentioned, to Gaspar Randazzo. And I do have the marriage records and a lot of the baptism records for each one. You should have that before you put them on. You can be fairly certain. I mean, if they're on the marriage record, the name might be a little bit off. So I do have the records I have most of the baptism records. I have all the marriage records. So if I didn't have the record, I would not add them to my tree. See, what's interesting here is I've already shown that Salvador Randazzo was also related to a lot of people there on that census record, and that he was related, of course, to the gangster Gaetano Badalamenti. But on a better note, if we go here, we see that Lorenzo, this is the direct line. Salvador's grandfather is Lorenzo. Lorenzo has a brother named Salvador. Well, if we follow Salvador's line, this is really interesting. Watch this. He's related. So because the grandfathers are brothers, he's something like a second cousin, I don't know, sometimes removed here. But this Peppino is actually the anti-mafia activist who wound up being killed under, well, they don't know for sure, but we believe that he was killed because of his activism against the mafia. So that is how I go about being able to find somebody on the census record. I'm talking mainly, immigrants here. How I find them on the census record and how I can find out where they're from by getting a naturalization record or a military record. And then from there, being able to use the catalog on familysearch.org. This is an example of Genesee. And then from here, being able to trace it back at least far enough to be able to put it on my tree. That's if you're going backwards like me. I'm just finding someone on a census record. If you're actually going for family, you'll be able to have them on your tree already, and then be able to plug in and plug in as you find the records on Family Search. I am available to help if you'd like me to do this for you. You can contact me in the description. You can also support the channel so I can do more videos like this more frequently because they take a lot of time. You can do so in the description. And on the store, I do have shirts available, so definitely check those out. I've been able to connect some pretty nefarious individuals on my tree, and some more related than others. The last one, of course, was Gaetano Badalamenti, the head of the Genesee mob, who had his boss, Cesar Manzella, blown up, may have actually been involved with killing his nephew, Peppino. Then there's Salvador Maranzano, the original boss of bosses. And of course, Vito LaDuca, who's the most closely related to me, who was involved in a number of barrel murders and counterfeiting. And it looks like he was also involved in a lot of crimes along the East Coast. So in that spirit, for the next video, this self-admitted super fascist, is he or is he not on my tree? And if so, how is he related to me, if at all? Tune in for the next video to find out.
Now go home and get your fucking shine box.